Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Joe, who's CEO of Pronavigator. Joe, good morning. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm delighted to be a part of this podcast. I listened to a few earlier episodes and some incredibly smart founders tackling major issues in the industry. So thank you for the opportunity and the ability to share my point of view on some of the opportunities ahead of us in the industry.
Awesome. Joe, flattery will get you everywhere. So thank you very much. And thank you for being complimentary about the guests. But, you know, you guys are a business we've been aware of for some time. It's a really interesting business and solves a good problem for the industry. So before I make a hash of it, be great if you could introduce the Pronavigator business and what it is you guys do.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO. We are an insurance technology company. We're serving the P&C industry, property and casualty. And in a nutshell, if I was to kind of describe what we do, we are a cloud-based knowledge management platform with a mission to streamline the storage and distribution of knowledge to make knowledge instant, effortless, and consistent for insurance staff from a single source of truth. So that's us in a nutshell.
That's a big goal, right? So that's a big, tangible, meaty goal. So I'm always interested in, you know, how do you get to that? What's the origin story, as Marvel would like us to see?
Yeah, you know, I didn't come from the industry, and you know, like they say, when you fall into the insurance industry, you never leave, and I think that's very true. I remember back in 2016, I called my insurance carrier with what I thought was a quick question about the policy, and an hour and 35 minutes, I was still on hold. And I have screenshots of this on my phone, and I was frustrated, I was annoyed, but you know, being kind of entrepreneurial, I've run businesses in the past and sold my previous company. I wanted to really understand and learn more about it. And I reached out to a good friend of mine. He was an actuary, and he spent his entire career in the insurance industry. We started really digging into some of the challenges that are faced within the industry, where you've got underwriters, you've got call center staff, you've got claim staff, you've got brokers and agents spending a lot of time every day looking for information. And we were in a world back then, and we still are, in which people expect things to be done in seconds. And so we saw an opportunity for us to build technology to help insurance organizations save lots of precious productivity time. And that journey took us to conversations with a lot of leading insurance companies on how can we use some of the advancements in technology to instantly and automatically resolve answers to questions for employees, and in return, helping customers like myself. And so he ended up being a co-founder. We launched the company. And it's been an exciting journey, of course, a roller coaster ride. But that's kind of the founding story of what we set out to solve.
Mm-hmm. So on lofty goals, and yeah, I said to you beforehand that I'm not going to be mean. I'm just going to read this statement out. This is a big statement, but it makes sense, I think, when we dig into what your product does and is. You've been described as the Google for insurance. And I just want to dig into, like, what does that mean in practical terms? Because, yeah, that's a big statement.
Yeah, and I would say the founding story, I don't think we set out to say, hey, we're going to be the Google for insurance. It was really a customer who kind of threw that name on us, and it really did stick. You know, when we talk about search, you know, Google usually comes to mind, right? You go on, you ask Google a question, you type in a query. Not only does it find the relevant web page, but it also extracts the answer in a kind of a short paragraph from that web page, you know, what they call a featured snippet. And that answer is so useful that Google displays that above all the other search results. You know, consumer search has come a long way. It hasn't always been that way. It hasn't always been a great experience, but definitely I think in the last 2 decades, it's really come a long way. You go in, you type a question, you get an answer, simple. But when you think about enterprise search today, that's broken. You know, within the enterprise, there's challenges that make search a very, very hard problem, right? You've got billions of pages on consumer search to help reinforce relevancy and accuracy. And when you look inside a typical company, they might only contain a few thousand documents. So the task of enterprise search is vastly different from consumer search. And it's really like trying to find a needle in a haystack. But companies are really looking for efficiency gains. They're looking for ways to better train and develop employees. They're looking for ways to improve customer experience and drive more profitability. And when we were asking our customers for feedback on how can we help solve some of these information challenges, it often boiled down to this description. They would say, I just want to Google it. And so this idea of why can't we leverage the same convenience, the great user experience that we get in our personal lives at our work was really the kind of the founding story for why that name kind of stuck with us. And we took the approach of trying to solve some of these challenges by looking at the types of questions that we use in insurance and really trying to read and understand and answer those questions. If insurance language was relatively simple and straightforward, then it's, out of the box systems could likely work well. Control F, you're trying to find your documents. But when we looked at some of the data for some of our customers, insurance employees would say anything but the simplest way of asking the query, right? We love our acronyms. So they'd say things like, what's the SBU limit? Or who writes 60A service? Or is GRC available on heritage homes? So we have this unique language of insurance, if you will, and relatively simple keyword-based search systems in our intranets today. They just are not built to solve the kind of the uniqueness or the language of insurance that's very unique to our industry. And so, over the last, 5 years, we've continually been building and refining our platform. We've had to stay really focused on solving this for this one domain, and not just understand the queries that are coming in and the questions, but the acronyms and the spelling mistakes, knowing SBU is sewer backup, knowing, one person may call it strata, someone else may call it a condominium. And so, assembling this kind of insurance enterprise knowledge management system presented challenges, but, advancements in machine learning, the data we have to train it has really allowed us to kind of build this kind of enterprise grade system similar to a Google-like experience that you may find in your personal life and using your system.
I was going to say, one of the things that I thought would be a challenge was that I worked in insurance when I first left university, and I remember then moving up to London because I worked in regional, I worked in commercial insurance, but regional insurance. And when we talk about liability, we were basically talking about, we were talking about casualty with respect to kind of motor, we were talking to kind of personal injury, and that's what it meant in my head. But then I moved to London, I was working in the Lloyd's market, and then you're talking about liability being this whole host of classes and all that simple nuance in language between companies, and companies even using their own acronyms. Is that just a kind of brute force kind of over time the system gets better, or is part of the technology that it accounts for things like that?
So if I was kind of on a high level, I'll try and break up the key ingredients of our system. So the first one is being able to understand the question, the query. And really the intent behind the question and extracting some of the key entities or the key terms within it. Now, within insurance, I would say there's a base that the beauty of our system is it allows for all our customers to be able to leverage that base of understanding. When we're configuring it for an organization, we're doing additional work to take on the nuances of that particular organization, the coverage types that are specific to them, the acronyms that they might use. So an organization coming in gets the advantage of being able to leverage kind of a shared learning, if you will, that's industry specific, which is trained on millions of queries that have gone into our platform. And then we're also able to configure and customize it for that particular organization to ensure we pick up the nuances of that group. And so you have to understand the question, and then you have to understand the answer, which is dissecting long knowledge articles or documents. In some cases, these are hundreds, if not thousands of pages in an underwriting manual or a policy wording doc. And we have to break those into snippets, much like Google does. And then we got to match the questions to the answers and make sure that the relevancy has very high accuracy, because you want to make sure that the results you're returning is exactly what they're looking for. And then of course, all the other things required in a enterprise knowledge management system. So user permissioning, bookmarks, sharing, filters, etc. So that's all kind of built in. But that's kind of the key ingredients of the platform and kind of the benefits that our customers get from leveraging the shared knowledge, if you will.
And who are your customers? Are they brokers, carriers, both, everyone in between?
Yeah, so we are currently working with about 100 organizations across 26,000 users. We typically specialize in larger scale organizations, be it an insurance company or a large broker agency. But we also have some customers who are 30 to 50 person type organizations. So from 30 to 50 all the way up to kind of Fortune 100 companies. But we definitely specialize in larger scale enterprises with national rollouts. They're acquiring quickly. They're trying to make sure everybody's consistent and up to date. And that's our typical customer.
Moving to one of your specific products, you've got a product called Sage. How does that work? How does that come into the equation?
So Sage is our knowledge management platform, and think of it as a kind of a single go-to place for information where staff of all skill levels can quickly and easily find information that they need on sales and service. So usually it's an underwriting team, it's a claims department, or an operations team, whether it's a broker agency or maybe it's a call center type setup. And the type of information they're referencing is underwriting manuals, policy wording documents, business process manuals, interpretation notes, all the things that you would think are stored in a SharePoint or an intranet or some sort of internal repository. And we really focus on three key areas: ease of use, search flexibility, and then presentation of that information. So that when someone's coming in, if they're searching a particular thing, we're able to provide them with an accurate, comprehensive view across multiple documents so that they're seeing the whole picture. They're looking at an underwriting manual, they're looking at the coverage terms, they're seeing the policy wording. There might be an announcement that's tied into that they need to be aware of. And so being able to kind of provide them this comprehensive view on the information that's returned back, really with the goal of improving the staff experience to make onboarding faster and training, but also really to ensure that they can get back to customers quicker and reduce call average handling time. And it's been quite significant. I mean, for some of our customers, some of their internal benchmarking, Sage got them back 26 minutes per day with a break even of 1.5 minutes per day. So it can be quite significant for a lot of organizations, particularly those that are trying to reduce call average handling time, where they're looking to improve the speed of response, they're looking to improve the customer satisfaction rate, and they're benchmarking us on this average handling time metric. And that's been where we've had the most success.
I would imagine it helps with on the personal employee level as well, though. Is the onboarding time must be much quicker for new staff or people that are promoted into new roles. Because one of the challenges of any organization, it doesn't matter how efficient you are, is there's always this kind of quirky repository of data, or and what you're doing with knowledge, you're having that knowledge in a centralized place that you don't have to refer to a colleague. You can go to the platform. You don't have to go to some obscure drive that someone's got this all saved on that you have to kind of look up. So the onboarding element was the thing I'm thinking about, because I'm such a obviously we're a recruitment business, or we're specialized in insurtech, so we're always thinking about onboarding experiences and things like those, like the supportive tools have a massive it's a massive confidence boost for someone that if they know there's a bit of a gap and there's a step up in role, that they've got something that they can lean to for some of those elements. I would imagine that's quite impactful.
So much of learning and development teams and training is not only training them about the product, so much of it is about where to search and how to search today. And that takes a lot of the time. So, trying to make that experience smoother and quicker and faster, especially in a world where it's hard to attract talent to the insurance industry, where you have, insurance veterans retiring and you're trying to ramp up staff quickly. And so those are, we're just one piece in many tools in this that can provide, a solution like this, but it is critical in this world.
The great thing about looking at search data is that you get to see trends, one presumes, with what's being searched. What are some of the key trends you're seeing in 2022, and how does that differ from 2021, for example?
I think it's a lot of the same. If I was to kind of look at 2022, I would say two things. I would say one, that belief that companies are going to save you time are going to win. I think that's something that's continued to be important. You look at, Amazon, a market leader, you look at Uber promising a car is going to arrive in 3 minutes, and it does. Companies that can save their customers enormous amounts of time and simplify the process of buying. No one wants added complexity in their lives. And I think a lot of consumers continue to ask, how come we can't get that type of predictably great experience when it comes to insurance? Mm-hmm. So, in a world where we have more choice, we have more options, in a world where the buyer, meaning all of us, have all the power and all the decision-making in the world, I think insurance organizations will continue to kind of look at not only the policies and the products they're selling, but how they're selling it, how they're building or buying technology to provide that customer experience in a way that consumers are demanding. Here you go, on your demand, on your terms, when it's convenient for you, not according to my schedule as the company, but your schedule as the buyer. So I think that's going to continue to be important. I would say the second thing is that, there's been a lot of investment in technology. There's a lot of innovation, but I find that it's, especially in the insurance industry, I find that it's particularly consumer facing, right? Quote and buying, better apps and websites, improving access for policyholders. But I think there's still areas largely ignored by technology. And I think that's the organization itself, and technology to make the organization and the people inside them operate more efficiently. And as you know, people are one of the biggest factors of success in any industry, but especially in an insurance world, where finding qualified workers and onboarding and recruiting and training staff is a top priority. And then we waste so much time on repetitive tasks. Guidewire had done a report. I think they did over like 300 engagements, and their conclusion was that 80% of the underwriters' time was filled with basic tasks, so gathering data entry, file documentation, clerical work, and really only 20% on expert evaluation. And so that's going to, I think, continue to be a trend. Is our employees getting access to what they need? Is there technology that can free up their time? And I think there's a lesson there for us as technology providers is we can't just build a tool and say, here you go, you got to figure out how to use it and implement it. But we have to figure out ways to take more and more work off the plates of our customers, give more value out of the box, not just deliver the tools and let them figure it out, but to be truly effective, build solutions to help with change management, with adoption. And that doesn't require an army of consultants or IT team to come in and disrupt existing workflows. Yeah.
Oh no, that's my big beef at the moment. I've invested really heavily in some technology for my business, and the onboarding is so bad that no one in the business is using it, and so therefore we've invested really heavily, and it's made me to kind of really look at it as two things. One, the onboarding isn't. They were pitching it as it's an investment for me, and I was like, no, it's an investment for you, because if you onboard me correctly, I'll stay forever. I don't want to move again. Yes. But you've onboarded me badly, and I'm about to try and I'm just going to see it as wasted cash and move to a new supplier already. So, and look, I'm not an insurance carrier, so they don't make decisions as quickly, and they can't. But I think the principle remains the same. But when I was talking about trends as well, one thing that, do you have the data of what is being searched on your platform by different businesses? Do you have that access to that information as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key benefits of our technology is giving granular insights back to the organization in terms of not only what people are searching for, what types of questions are coming in from customers, but also knowledge gaps inside their organization. Questions that are coming in that they don't have products for, which can help shape, product strategy, but also, learning gaps that they didn't know existed. Right? And that's something that, you know, a lot of out-of-the-box systems you might not get. And so being able to provide those insights back to the organizations, I think is powerful.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you were saying it. I was like, well, if you've got, there's all this search criteria, you might go, well, there's a gap in our training. Like everyone doesn't seem to know this. So it'd be a really good insight to what your team do and don't know. And then of course, that product development piece was the other thing that I think was interesting for.
And that can be pretty granular, just to kind of build off that. I mean, region specific, product specific, like down to user level, because we have that type of granular insight. So there's, depending on the sophistication of the organization and what they're looking for, there's a lot of insights you can glean from something this, because it's real time. As customers are calling in, they're searching the tool, you're able to get that kind of feedback back.
What's the main driver, or maybe not? I'm interested to see how the key driver for buying your platform versus the key feedback you get. And so once someone's been using it for 6 months, are there kind of, and they're enjoying the experience, is the main benefit they're getting typically matching up with the reason they bought it in the first place? Or is a disparity there? Like, we bought it to save us time, but the value we're actually seeing is in new product strategy, or I'm just interested to see if that's kind of, not all the time, but if that evolves at all.
Yeah, I do think the analytics is kind of a nice to have when they're going in to purchase it. It becomes super valuable kind of later on. But really, when they're looking at it, I would say the key things are consistency across their teams, especially in commercial lines where you could have different underwriters having kind of, a different view of things, potentially referencing out-of-date information because of all the changes that happen so frequently. But they really start to see an impact in terms of bottom line on this reduction in call average handling time. And I'll just give you an example. One of our national clients, they were using this within their call center, and they had about 1,200 employees on the system. And they had set an expectation of what they expected to see in terms of a decrease in average handling time by using our system. And before they even started that, they did benchmarking. We did a pilot with them. They used 3 or 4 other systems. They ended up picking us, rolled it out nationally. And then last quarter, they actually came back with a report that we surpassed that reduction in average handling time expectation by 264%. So pretty significant in terms of value to that organization. So that continues to prove itself in terms of the ROI for the organization. And then there's the unquantifiable benefits, which are arguably a lot harder to measure in some cases. Increase in sales, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, better onboarding training. Those ones I think are a bit harder for us to track. But nonetheless, just from an ROI perspective, it's a no-brainer in my opinion, but there's a strong ROI in technology to improve employee productivity. Ours is one piece. There's many others, but technology to improve our staff and our teams. I look at that all the time. Our software developers, our data scientists. Anything I can do that's going to increase that return is almost always well worth that.
And I think that's, do you think the customer expectation, let's take that back. I'm a big believer in how your experience as an individual and a consumer of technology on consumer grade technology has to have an impact on how you view your, as an employee, like your work setup. For example, most people have pretty modern phones, they have great technology on them. So your patience wears a bit thin when your company doesn't invest in technology, which makes your life difficult. So, I think the demands now from an employee, or the expectation from an employee is that if my company is not investing in technology to make my life easier, they don't value my time. Because essentially we're saying when we're saving someone's time, we're also respecting their skills and abilities, and we're focusing on what they're better at. And I think some of this stuff has been, the pandemic has had a massive impact on work culture, remote working. I wondered how much of an impact did the remote working environment have on your business? I suppose in two reasons. I'm presuming it led to an increase in interest because this is the sort of technology that assists when people are working remotely. But how did it impact you as well as Pronavigator as a business?
Yeah, when we started the company, we obviously never could have anticipated how Pronavigator might be used at a time like this. The world transitioned to work from home. Insurance organizations the world over had to scramble and adapt quickly to support their teams and make sure everyone was productive and kind of working from their home offices. And so we've seen the need to support employees who are working from home or wherever the most convenient place might be to be able to get work done anywhere and anytime. And we've definitely seen that acceleration and adoption as we're kind of settling into this kind of new economy, if you will. I'll give you another example. When we started the company, I would say 25% of insurance companies we talk to use some sort of enterprise-wide collaboration chat system, whether it's Teams or Slack. The first year after COVID, I would say that percentage was about 50%. 50 had adopted something, 50 were still trying to figure out. And that debate's over. I mean, every single company has implemented one of these tools. And, if you've used these tools, once you start using them, it's very hard to go back. Zoom is another example. We're on Zoom today. And in fact, I joke that when folks come back into the office, they go into a meeting room all day and they're having back-to-back meetings on Zoom anyway. So I think there's definitely been a permanent shift into the types of technology that we use today to be able to communicate. And communication has always been important, but now more than ever, it's critical. And it's something that we're seeing with technology today in terms of how can we give our staff what they need to be effective? There's a great quote, how can we systemize the predictable so that you can humanize the exceptional? And I think that's something that is very, very true in our industry because it's a people industry. I mean, technology is just there to really free up our times. In many ways, insurance is a sad business. You pay premiums, you get nothing in return until something horrible happens. And so kind of success in this business requires building real human connections, empathy. That's something technology will never replace. But if technology can automate a lot of the tedious, it can free us up to do more of the human side of things and really empower people within the industry to have more time to be there for people. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah. It took me a really long time to kind of not fall into the trap of the robots are coming when I was talking about automation and the more, particularly in our industry, it's exactly right. I mean, I talked about the top. I worked in claims. I spent half my time filling out forms, and giving the game away about my age. That a lot of that was like pen and ink, and you look back now, and there was so much like duplication of effort, and what we actually needed to be there for was we were dealing with people that had claims, and they were commercial clients, so they were sophisticated buyers. But they're still in a bad place. They're still at a place of loss. They're still kind of like, there's a problem that needs to be solved. And when your whole claims team are, and I'm just using claims as an example, are, spending their time doing admin, which could have been kind of pre-populated, there's just a waste of everyone's time. And every kind of microsecond we can invest and move it more towards being customer focused and the end consumer of insurance, then the better we'll be. I wanted to ask you about innovation, actually, because a large part of them, and we're definitely going off script here, so forgive me, but how do you promote culture of innovation within your business? What do you do to kind of bring? I'm always like after practical steps. When you think about innovation and creating an innovative environment, what practical steps do you take personally at Pronavigator to kind of try and make sure that happens?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is freeing up people's time to really focus on. I guess let me take a step back here. It's in a world of like back-to-back meetings and one call to the next, I would say that's the antithesis of what you need for innovation to happen. And the more we've been able to shield and protect our team members' time, give them more time to focus on what's important, really narrow the focus, say, these are the top 3 things that we need to get done. If you end up dropping the ball on everything else, that's okay. Gives them the flexibility and the freedom to actually look at ways to drive innovation. And I think that's been a bit of a switch for me, right? Where, you know, as a scaling company, you're trying to build processes and systems, and you're trying to, you know, make sure that everything goes according to schedule and on plan and from here to here to here. But it's a lot more messy than that. And the more we can take off of people's plates, the more we can free them up to actually focus. I think that allows for innovation, you know, particularly when we're looking at software engineers and data scientists and that kind of world where we live in. But the same applies, I think, to kind of multiple industries. You know, with kind of the pandemic, we moved to a fully remote world. So we're allowing our team members to work from anywhere, to in some cases have a better kind of quality of life, if you will. They don't have to be stuck in an apartment building here downtown where our office is. They can go really anywhere in the world and be able to work. And that also, I think, helps in terms of creativity and kind of allowing that kind of culture to thrive. But that doesn't mean no accountability, right? We still have our OKRs and our KPIs, and we're holding people to them, but kind of trusting people to kind of go and execute within that scope. I think we've seen that be much more productive.
I think that it's interesting with the KPIs. KPIs was such a dirty word in so many industries. But then when you're working remotely, they are the only practical solution. But I think the benefit is the technology recently is so much better at recording what people have truly done and haven't done, that it's now a fair gauge. Whereas a lot of these things used to be filling things out to prove you've done things. So it all feeds into that sort of technology space. Because I'm sort of a big believer in, even if we talk about innovation, restrictions or limitations are useful for innovation. And I always think about this from a creative standpoint. And, you know, I've mentioned a few times, I'm a writer, and in my spare time, so I write plays and comedy. And, you know, it's always easier to work from, here's a fixed environment. There's 2 guys in a bar. You know, it's easier to create something from that than it is. And I think it's the same with the, you know, it's a weird parallel to draw, but I think it's the same with like KPIs, is that, you know, I don't know, people don't like them because they feel sort of controlling, but at the same time, it's like, how do you measure performance? How do you know you're improving, particularly when you go into a fully remote environment? Because you don't have those little coffee pot conversations about the performance. You don't see people on day to day. So really the statistics are a fair kind of compromise on kind of how people are doing. So yeah, I'm big. It's such a demonized thing in my industry. I'm conscious of time, so just want to kind of leap onto this. Obviously, artificial intelligence, automation is something that you guys know well. Where do you think we are on our sort of innovation journey in respect to kind of artificial intelligence in the insurance industry? And are there any elements of the kind of process that you are sort of maybe surprised that we haven't seen application on in that sector yet?
Yeah, I think going back to that significant skills talent shortage that we have in the industry, I think there's a lot of room for innovation within that. You know, the combination of making the insurance industry more appealing while also helping kind of stretch the capacity of the resources that are already there, you know, is priceless. So the more appealing we can make it, the easier it's going to be to attract kind of new talents. And as veterans leave, their knowledge leaves with them. So, you know, being able to kind of automate a lot of those processes is critical. I think what's really interesting about AI and machine learning is how scalable it is, right? Where systems actually get better when they're used more, right? Most products and services, they either degrade with increased volumes, you know, if I buy a database and you buy a database, that same database doesn't get smarter because we're both using it. But with machine learning, it actually gets better. You're doing this collective kind of learning across customers. You get this data network effect. And so that's a really interesting thing to look at when we're thinking about how we can apply AI and machine learning to our industry. But that freeing up of people's time, I think, is something that, I've touched on it before, but I think it's going to continue to be important for us to look at, right? I have a family of 3 kids, and pre-COVID, we loved to travel. And my wife just loved taking pictures. And, in general, my kids are pretty well behaved, but, after a while, they kind of roll their eyes when you ask them to pose for a picture, or, and the reason is because we're pulling them out of the moments, right? We're making them stand, and we're making them smile, and we're making them kind of so focused on the technical aspects of trying to take the perfect picture that you kind of lose the ability to be in the presence and live in the moments. And I don't know if you've seen this, but they have these follow me autonomous drones to essentially automate videography. So in other words, it's positioning the camera exactly where it needs to be and start and stop at the right moments, be able to pan and zoom to really automate the routine so that we can stay in the moments. And I think that's key here, right? That being there in the moment, for our customers, being there, in the moment when they need help. And that's what our customers expect of us. And we get so bogged down in processes and tasks that we can kind of forget that. So when you're looking at innovation in our industry and how machine learning and AI is going to be used, I think there's an opportunity, especially in a time like this, to really embrace that type of technology, free us up from, a lot of these mundane tasks. And we're excited to continue to keep working with others across the industry to kind of help make that a reality.
Yeah, it's really interesting point you make about talent coming in, because it literally, so I mean, at the moment I'm working on a group head of product role for machine learning, artificial intelligence, SaaS product into an insurtech, and there isn't, I'm not saying there isn't any talent, that's because someone's sitting there that does that and they'll be offended, but we're not looking in the insurance industry because it's not there. So you're going into financial services, credit cards, banks. There's some stuff going on there. There's loads obviously going on in like ad tech. There's a lot going on in other sectors, and it's interesting because you then have to go back to why is insurance a great place to be? Why is it important? And obviously we can rolling out the insurance as a social good and explaining what that actually means, but I think generally there's still so much more we've got to do as an industry as about bringing in the best talent. And a little bit of that is probably freeing up time to do exciting stuff, because if you work in machine learning and AI SaaS products, you probably work for one of these cool companies that say 1 day a week, just work on something fun and innovative and interesting. And I don't think that culturally quite fits with the insurance industry yet. Can't imagine AIG giving everyone off Fridays to just go and create new products. But and I'm not saying they should, and they're not alone, but you never know.
Well, I think in the next decade, I'll make a prediction here. I would say almost every company will need to look at themselves almost like a technology company with a product offering on top to some degree. And I think positioning themselves like that obviously has advantages, but not having developers driving your underlying product is going to leave capital on the table that someone else is going to come in and drive product margins down and profit margins up. So I do think that that's going to continue to be a trend within the industry to kind of position themselves as a technology company with an insurance product offering just to some degree. But I can be proven wrong for sure.
Well, we'll have to come back in 10 years' time, see if you're right, Joe. But look, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a while coming. Your team have been great in trying to help us get this together. So I love what you guys do. I think it's a really neat solution. It's something that I worked in the insurance industry, and I know I would have, even back then, it would have been required. So it's got so many kind of pluses for your client base. So it's really interesting to see something that doesn't have just this singular win. It's multiple. So thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast, and really appreciate you spending the time with me.
Thank you very much. It was my privilege, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Joe.